Not all of them, a lot of them. Is this a bad thing? Well, that depends on your perspective. From the perspective of a government, that's a very good thing. You've got easy people to blame at that point. You have a pool of victims, scapegoats. Now, one of the things that is played upon by world governments to this day, one of the very same things that was used to systematically eradicate many of my ancestors, is this very same banking scheme. Oh, it's not us. We didn't do it. It's the Jewish bankers. The governments aren't responsible for the wars they started. It's the Jewish bankers. Government officials should not be held accountable. That should be the Jewish bankers. And they push it, and they push it, and they push it. Kind of like they push the fact that you guys are broke on, oh, it must be immigrants. It must be the homeless or the mentally ill. They're the reason you're broke. But then look at how much money is wasted in those areas. When I say wasted, I mean it is wasted money. These are all programs that are shown not to work. The only time in history that these things worked as intended was when they were intended as concentration camps or death camps. When these things were obviously systematically intended and used to harm a populace, well, yeah, then it's successful. But what about when we ship it off and sell it to our peoples, packaged as something else? Oh, it's not torture. It's not torture if a police officer does it to its own population. It's pain compliance. Yeah. It's not post-traumatic stress disorder from being abused. It's mentally ill. Mentally ill, mentally ill. It's mentally ill. You must be mentally ill. You're mentally ill. Congratulations, you're mentally ill. So now, you can't even turn in your predator because you're called mentally ill. Who did the Germans go after first in World War II? Was it the Jews? No, it was the homeless and the disabled. That was very first. Homeless and the disabled. Just like the Spartans would have done. We like to worship Sparta, don't we? Yeah. We like to push that movie real heavy, and how it helped to bring out Athenian democracy, and how Athenian democracy is such a great thing. No, it wasn't. If you had a vagina, Athenian democracy was horrible, which is messed up because their patron deity or matron deity is Athena, a female god. So what's all this Jewish stuff got to do with it? And the Jesus and all of that? Well, we get to see how throughout our history, human beings have repeatedly used the Jesus and their religion as excuses to harm others. God wills it! That's right. Both the Muslims and Christians used that during the Crusades. This is where history becomes important. Back then, you weren't allowed to handle money if you were a Christian. You weren't allowed to lend money as a Christian because it was considered a sin. So they would have the Jews do it. This is all across Europe. Europe created after the Romans basically told everybody they were going to be Christian. um, the Roman Empire broke apart, and the Jewish people were different religiously. They were kind of, sort of, almost Christians, sort of, but not really. I mean, they kind of, sort of worship the same God, but that God moved past them, and now we're its favorites. We're not allowed to do this stuff, but you guys are lesser humans, so you can do the banking stuff. The banking stuff was not a job that the Jews necessarily wanted. You know that people are greedy and selfish, and when it comes to being greedy and selfish, they want someone to blame when their finances fucking suck. And really, it's not all our fault that our fucking finances suck. Look at the expenses that we gotta throw out there, that we have to put out there in order to try to keep people happy, just so they don't come and take everything that we've earned. We do the same thing today. It's the bias against Jews that is used. It was used during the Crusades. It was used after the Crusades. The banks were literally created in Europe for Jews, so that Jews could do the money lending thing. And then, of course, the governments would get a kickdown out of it. You're the king of France. You've got some Jewish banks that lend money in your country. Well, that's good for you. That's revenue. There'll be taxes on them transactions. All right. Now, we've got a lot of Jewish bankers to this day in the banking industry, in places where they really, by no right, should be there any longer. And let me explain to you what I mean. By representation. See, these bankers don't own all that money. Not in any of these countries. None of these bankers are rich. I mean, they're rich compared to all of us, but the bank, being a company, is owned by a lot of people, including the governments in each of these countries. Now, if they can continue to play off of a bias, why wouldn't they? The United States government does the same thing to this very day. We have so many... Well, here's how you guys want to look at it. You want to look at them as all being Jewish names, but they're German names. They're heavy, heavy German names because many of these German immigrants over the years were Jewish. The Holy Roman Empire was, oddly enough, Germany. When we talk about how the Romans never took over Germany, you're right, they didn't. Germany voted itself in as the new Rome. Or the peoples of that region, anyway. And the Holy Roman Empire, it lasted for a while. Charlemagne, all the way up to King George. All of them. All of them relied on Jewish banking, a Jewish banking industry that was created because their religion allowed them to do that, and the Christian religion did not allow Christians to do that. The Knights Templar were a special exception. But also, they were not accepting money. If you started the trail with 2,000 gold pieces, it was a very, very dangerous trail. So you'd have a piece of paper that would say how much, and the next person at the next station would decipher it. Now this is Christians and Muslims fighting in the Holy Land, and oddly enough, the Christians are still using real heavily the Jewish banking system. They need it. Also, if things go wrong with the finances, they need someone to take the fall. They need someone to take the blame. We push anti-Semitism to this day by, well, you know, you really want to get a Jewish lawyer. You really want to get a Jewish patent lawyer. You really want to get a Jewish divorce lawyer. You really want to get a Jewish lawyer. You really want to have a Jewish person do your taxes. You really want to have a Jew. Really? And then if it gets messed up, we've got anti-Semitism. Oh, well, I went to the Jews, and the Jews didn't do anything for me. The Jews. Isn't that a strange way to describe a people? The Jews. The blacks. The whites. The Christians. Anyway, the banking system that we have today does exactly what it's supposed to do. It gives us somebody to blame other than the federal government. Dividing people, that's how we are kept conquered. Oh, well, we've got BLM. Good. Let's advertise the shit out of BLM stuff. Let's also show the hypocrisy of it every fucking night on TV. Let's show the hypocrisy of the Me Too movement and how men are treated. Over bias. Bias. If I was to believe this religious bullshit, I'd be a master mathematician, I suppose. The Jews, when they were forced into exile, were also forced into the banking industry and the blacksmithing industry. Well, the smithing industry, I should say, because it was blacksmithing, silversmithing, goldsmithing. Goldsmith is actually a Jewish name. Goldsmith. Goldberg, Silverberg, Silverman, Goldman. These are all Jewish names. Are you sure they're Jewish names? See, these names all come from titles. If your last name was Fletcher, chances are pretty good that your ancestors at one point in time were Fletchers. It was probably a family business. If you were a Fletcher, you would teach your children how to fletch, and they would teach their children how to fletch. If your last name was Boyer, you probably made bows. If your last name was Smith, you were probably a metalsmith of some sort. If your name was John Carpenter, you were probably a fucking carpenter. If Jesus would have been born in the Middle Ages, what would his name have been? Jesus Carpenter. His father was a carpenter. It would have been Jesus Carpenter. Pretty easy. Goldberg, Goldstein, Goldman, Silverstein, Shel Silverstein. That's right. Silver Cup, I believe is what it translates to. German name, that's right. A Jewish German name. It is specifically derived from the German language for the Jews as a description of what they did. It wasn't until later on when the Pope got pissed off that all the Jews were handling all of the gold pretty much everywhere and said, hey, we want to decorate our churches again, especially after the whole Viking situation. Like once the Vikings were out of the picture, people wanted to pretty up the churches again. You get to see, the Vikings were running around raiding everything. The churches were bare, and a lot of the churches that were built at that point in time were bare fucking bones. We got a lot of really cool stuff, of course, like Westminster Abbey was during the Viking years. Yup. That's a pretty sufficient sized church. I mean, it's not the biggest, but it's all right. We made Jews handle the money. By we, I mean all of us citizens who turned a blind eye. We want someone to blame as well, and we know that we don't have the balls to stand up to our government. It's nice to have somebody to blame. And if the government will tell you you can take it out on the Jews, then by God, you'll take it out on the Jews. Your enemy tells you who to bully, and you go bully them. Hey, I want you to go steal that kid's lunch money for me. If you don't, I'm going to give you a wedgie, and then I'm going to beat you up, and I'm going to take your lunch money. It's called strong-arming. A lot of kids, they go, you know what? I don't want to get beaten up. I'd rather do the beating up at this point. If I give this guy what he wants by going and beating up who he wants me to beat up, it's dumb. And we always got to have a scapegoat, don't we? When it comes to the money, you blame Jews. And you got the homeless and disabled to blame on everything else. Mass shootings are all the fault of the victims, aren't they? They're the fault of people with PTSD and depression. Those are mental illnesses, folks. While you use the term mentally ill to pretend that every person with depression or PTSD is a violent schizophrenic. So you refuse to fucking listen to them. Well, no wonder they walked into your workplace and fucking put a bullet in your goddamn head. I think it's disgusting. The Second Amendment is there for a reason, but American citizens do not utilize the Second Amendment for its purpose, and that is sad and pathetic. To this day, the whole blaming the Jews thing that we want to pretend is just a Hitler thing, no, we do that here in America to this day. We want to say, all these people with Jewish names, Goldberg and Silverberg, Silverman, Silverstein. Those are all German names, asshole! Goldberg means town of gold. In German! What is Goldberg in ancient Hebrew? Literally nothing. There is nobody in the Bible, the Old Testament or the New Testament, named Goldman or Goldberg or Silverberg or Silverman or Silversmith or Goldsmith or Goldman or Goldberg. Some of these are the same monikers, just in different languages, especially during the Crusades that became important. And Hebrews, who tried to maintain their language, were able to communicate with Jews who were from other countries with other languages, and they were able to coordinate in order to help finance, of course, the wars. But this is money that was asked for by the governments who created the institutions that these Jews worked for. These Jews worked for these people. That's what they did. Just like the people running our banking establishments today. It's a job. This isn't literally their money invested. This is literally the American dollar that's invested. Not sure if y'all ever heard of the FDIC. It's backed by American gold. Gold that's held at Fort Knox. Not Fort Shalom. It's not the center of some Yiddish ceremony. Like the ideas that people have about Jews, the ideas that people have about Asians and blacks and whites and Europeans and Americans and holy fuck, why don't you get to know a motherfucker before you throw all that shit at him, you dummy? A lot of the people that I talk to that claim they were my friends and claim they cared about me, for years they ignored me. It didn't matter how good I was to them. I basically just stopped existing when I was no longer able to give them everything that their will and command demanded of me. When I was no longer able to physically assist them in getting out of another fucked up situation where they went back to the dude who was beating them. Sean, he's beating me. I got kids. Fuck. And I can do the whole, well, why don't you call your sister? Why don't you call your mom? Why don't you call? They don't care. They don't care. There's a reason you're asking me instead of asking your family. Is it because I'm Jewish? No, I'm not Jewish. My ancestry is primarily Russian, German, and Hebrew descent, which means, yeah, some of them were Jewish, some of them were German, probably some Goldsteins, Goldmans, Goldbergs, oh, and Schwartzes, which is black skin, black hair, black eyes. That's right. Schwartz is a very specific type of black. Blacksmiths. See, there's a reason that Jewish were also chosen as blacksmiths, and this comes to religious beliefs as far as the Christian religion goes as well. See, magic was the devil's work. Christians weren't supposed to do the devil's work. Metallurgy was considered magic until it was ordained finally by the Catholic Church That's how we get the modern rendition of science. It's not that there was never science beforehand, but the science that was kind of people's way of thinking when the Catholic Church, who was in charge of it, started allowing it. I mean, what science did we start with? The idea that you could turn lead or mercury into gold. It's called alchemy. It's insanity. It's dumb. Some people thought that you could turn literally any substance into gold. And maybe it's possible, but not with the technology they had then and not with the technology that we got now. Now, when it comes to all of our deep, dark projects, we want to create institutions that are run by scapegoats. If something goes wrong, we want the scapegoat. We want to know that we're not going to get in trouble for what we've done. We want to know that we can blame somebody else for it. Oh, well, it was this financial group that screwed it up. Or it's the Jews in the banking industry. It's the Jewish banking industry. Why was the fucking Jewish banking industry created? Why is it that people keep appointing Jewish people to power? It's because you push the bias. It's obvious that a lot of these Jewish people who are in power shouldn't be there. They're only there because they're Jewish. Now, there may be other Jewish people who are more qualified for the job or smarter or better with money. But the reason that we push these people into the positions that they're in is because they're Jewish. You want a Jewish person there. The bias says that a Jewish person is supposed to be good there in that position. And, well, who cares if we pick the right Jew or not? You know? Then we allow that to be a representation of the Jewish population as a whole, don't we? Oh, these Jewish people destroying us with their banking, trying to undermine America with their Jewish banking. These homeless people trying to undermine America with their filthy thieving and drugging and everything else that Americans love so much. Nothing like a bunch of sinners in houses yelling at sinners on the streets about being sinners. You guys are sinners. You can't judge me. You got the protection of the house and the rights you're supposed to have because of it, like Zayd Atkinson, the pussy. Samuel Leon Lawrence IV, the pussy. Meow. Two men who were treated extremely well compared to the homeless. If Samuel Leon Lawrence IV had been homeless, he wouldn't have gotten paid $95,000. If Zayd Atkinson had been homeless, he wouldn't have gotten paid $130-something thousand. Waylon Lolatai, the officer who thought it was okay to assault me, was involved in both of those situations, just so you know. As well as, well, at least a handful of others that I am aware of that were caught on camera. How many of them weren't? Why didn't anyone help me to get the body cameras? Why did I have to go in alone to try to get those, only to be threatened, harassed, intimidated, assaulted, arrested? Oh yeah, because being an American doesn't mean a thing to an American. The rights that we're supposed to have don't mean a goddamn thing to any of us. You let them get away with doing anything as long as they do it to someone else. Even if it's somebody you care about, how much do you care about them? Do you care enough to do anything about it and their views? Or no? If the answer is no, why not? I thought you said you care about them. That doesn't sound like caring about them. That sounds like looking the other way. When brave men do nothing, that is evil enough. No, that's not the right quote. When good men do nothing, that is evil enough. Another famous quote is, all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And then there's, not choosing sides in matters of tyranny is choosing the side of the tyrant. Silence is violence. If you can live in times like these and do nothing for those that you know, all you are is an opinion on Facebook. Well, Facebook doesn't do shit. Facebook is not a court of law. Your arguments on Facebook are squat. Your bias, that's what runs things, because that's what you are powered by. That's what you are motivated to do. You are all taught these bias, just as every woman out there is aware that if she doesn't get what she wants from a man, she can just pretend he touched her naughty or looked at her the wrong way now. If a man looks in a woman's direction and he is not physically attractive, he can go to prison. No joke. Where the hell did I put my goddamn scissors? Oh, there they used to be. I found them. I had to trim my mustache in the dark last night, and I noticed I missed a spot or 8 or 10 or most of it. Oh, no. That is not happening. Apparently, I took my scissors out at some point last night. Well, obviously, when I trimmed, where the hell would I have put them in? Well, it's raining outside. I can dump my tea containers. Jesus fuck, I need a new back. This is bullshit. The manager at the Denny's here gave me ibuprofen last night. I had a pretty severe fucking headache. So although I'm against taking pills, once in a great while, if something works and it's helpful. I'm not against helpful medicine. What I'm against is drugging everything. Not everything is a druggable offense. If you're depressed, there might be a reason you're fucking depressed. If your kid just fucking died, you should be allowed to fucking mourn. Not, here's some pills, go back to work. Get over it. Get over it. Get over it. Isn't that everybody's answer now? Their answer for their excuse, for their complacency. You just need to get over it. You just need to ignore it. Wow. It is looking like I will not be trimming my mustache. It's gonna have to stay fucking messed up and fugly. For those of you who are OCD, I'm gonna give you a good look at it. That way you can get all heebie-jeebied out with me. Oh, come on now. I found them. Savor the flavor and save it for later with the flavor saver. Yeah, fuck it, close enough. I think that is probably the worst job I've ever done at trimming my mustache. I'll take it. I did them with a pair of kid scissors. Now, I'm gonna choke that out of my... Oh, fuck. Anyway, when you've got people in power, they always want someone they can pass the buck on to. And more's the better if you will pass the buck on to those other people instead. If they can just gently push you in the direction of blaming immigrants or men or blacks or the mentally ill or the homeless, and they'll make more than a few subtle hints, and then we all should be paying attention to the reaction of the American public, because every politician does. A politician, if he wants to get reelected, has to figure out how to con you into voting for him or her. And that means paying attention to your reactions. If the majority of your reactions to, or the majority of the people who are being loud about it, reactions to abuse are, hey, we want these cops arrested, these cops should be basically euthanized. Yeah, politicians are gonna try to find a way to make that happen. If the whole idea is, well, you know what, if someone tells on a police officer, then they deserve to go out and be left in a swamp. Well, that's what politicians are going to go for. If the majority of the people speaking up say, They think that black people should be slaves. Oh yeah, the United States government will go right back to goddamn slavery. You think they give two fucks about you? Hell no. If every white person in America said, hey, we should take all them black folks and force them back onto them plantations, well, fuck yeah, the United States already has plantations in the South run by American slaves who are black. So no, it's not something that is in the realm of fucking fantasy as a possibility. We've got states just now starting to vote on whether or not they believe that slavery should be finally outlawed in America. Finally outlawed. Is Oregon one of those states that voted for or against slavery? That's right, folks. The 13th Amendment made it so that instead of slavery being legal in the South for private owners, slavery became legal nationwide for state and local governments. Oh yes, and the federal government. They can't put you on a work crew until you've been convicted. Did you know that? When you busted your ass, you got 6 years of busting your ass under your belt. You turned 18 and you fucking hit the workforce hard. And you thought you were going to make something of yourself. And of course, things don't go well. So you got a wife, and she likes beating on you all the fucking time. Well, one night you get sick of that shit, and you push her to get her the fuck away from you. She doesn't run into anything. She doesn't hit her head on the counter or fucking fall into the bathtub or fucking any crazy shit like that. You just push her to get her away from you. She's hitting you. And the cops show up, and your head is fucking lumpy. And they arrest you. Now you're sitting in jail. Legally, it's not assault. Legally, pushing someone, pushing your assailant away from you is not assault. They are already in the process of trying to do bodily harm against you. Pushing them away is not against the law, and neither is restraining them. But then again, it depends on who it is. If you restrain a woman that's hitting you, then they'll charge you with what? Illegal imprisonment. All played on bias. Now, who put these people in that position? This bias puts all of us in a very precarious situation. Even a lot of women that I know who say that it's wrong that this happens admit that they still utilize it. If you got it, flaunt it, kind of, I guess. A lot of women I know, they use their looks to get free shit. They don't see it as free shit. They put a lot of work into looking pretty. A lot of work in trying to learn how to manipulate people and to learn the bias if they have to move to a new area. In Boulder, Colorado, you got to be all hippie, but you move to Chapel, Nebraska, it might be essential that you pretend you hate black people. Otherwise, when people bring up your name, they say, that N-word lover. Well, that ain't going to get you in good with the folks in Chapel, Nebraska too well. You've also got the public face and the undertones. You've got the public face that these officials put on, and then you've got, like, of course, the guy who's in charge nationwide of drinking and driving. What do you get busted doing? Drinking and driving. The senator who's in charge of the fight for exploited and missing children. What was he doing? He was fucking little kids. They seek positions of power, same as anyone else. Positions of power that allow them to get away with doing things. Just like the most prolific serial killers in our history. Serial killer nurses, they seek out positions of power like that. Just like these guards who keep raping and molesting inmates, they seek out those positions of power. They seek out brotherhoods, where those other people, they've got a similar mind to you and they will do similar things to you. No, not every sheriff's department employee who works at the jail is going to rape you. Most of them will take part in the assaults against you when you try to turn them in, though. Most of them will take part in the gaslighting, the walking by your cell and making fun of you as they pass. The teasing you when you try to turn in a report against somebody there who has done something illegal against you, and that person brings it back to your cell and then they beat you up in your cell. One of the things the police did real heavy with Megan Missigatis especially, I'm supposed to have rights under law that were not observed, but because certain people wanted to use certain titles, well, the sheriff's department got to pretend that I had the advocacy that I was supposed to have legally. I didn't, not at any point in time. It's not just anti-Semitism. If you get BLM blaming the KKK, get KKK blaming BLM, get MMIW blaming one or the other. One of the major things is to blame white people now, isn't it? Like we want to ignore everything that wasn't a white person committing a crime against a black person or against a native, don't we? Turns out over 80% of the solved murders are from other Native Americans. So, where are the other ones coming from? Primarily police, law enforcement agencies, things of that nature. Oddly, it's not a whole bunch of crusty old white guys driving around the country murdering anybody who's not white. Now, there might be one or two crusty people doing exactly that, but there's also plenty of black predators who choose only white victims. We don't choose who they hate or why. But we're stuck in a world with them. I prefer to live in a world where we have the right to defend ourselves. I prefer to live in a world where if I see Ted Bollinger approaching me in my own domicile, I can pull my gun on him and let him know exactly what's going to happen before he ever steps foot in my house. I should have the right to do that. If you come in my house uninvited, it is my right to assume, especially with Ted Bollinger's history, that he is there specifically and only with the intent of harming me or my loved ones. Whether there's an international Jewish banking conspiracy or not, people's motivations are fucking simple. We are animals. Food, water, and fucking shelter. After that, breeding rights. Food, water, and shelter are the most important. And you know what? Sometimes your breeding rights override your food, water, and shelter needs, don't they? How many times have you ended up homeless for dating the wrong woman? How many times have you ended up homeless because the man that you thought was your protector ended up being the guy who was beating on you? Most homeless people, male or female, the number one reason for being out here on the streets is abuse. Abuse at home. Now, whether you're living with roommates who are friends of yours that just rip you off, or roommates that you found through Craigslist that just rip you off, you're still getting ripped off. And then there's the people who are the most at risk of this happening. But while it happens to us, we're supposed to go to services that don't care that it's happening to us and want to ignore it and not assist us with that at all. And these are the places that we're told we're supposed to go to for that. They don't do that job. And they don't communicate with each other or the public about it not being their job and them not doing that job. They know that the assumption is there that they're doing that job or that they're supposed to do that job. They know that they can get away with a lot just by not coming forward about that. Oh, well, you know, if I don't say that that's not my job and the police continue telling these people that it's my job, well, then the police are sending these people to me. And as a therapist, because that's who apparently when you're called mentally ill, you're supposed to go to a therapist to turn in your fucking predators. Holy fucking shit. Ugh. God bless America. I think I'm gonna go through and get myself a Burger King burger. I'm fairly certain I have it now. I think I have a $20 bill. I've been eating very little. I do make sure to eat at least one meal a day. It costs me $20 a day to live before I pay any of my bills. I'd like a hamburger.
Anything else?
Nope, that'd be all.
$1.99.
Thank you, ma'am. I've had to do desperate things because people wouldn't listen. I've had to deal with anti-Semitism, anti-homo, anti-hobo, anti-just about everything. Anything that you could possibly try shoving on another person, well, there's a special interest group. You can't even take this stuff out on child molesters anymore, so you take that shit out on us. It's a hate crime to go after a child molester, but it's not a hate crime to go after a homeless person. And all of you know it. You also know that even though it's against the law to go after somebody who's called mentally ill, the fact that you called them mentally ill means that it's your word versus theirs and they automatically lose. They need a friend or family who actually cares about them. If my friends and family had actually cared before Natalie died, it would have taken a very minimal fucking effort on their part to do something about it. A very fucking minimal. Now it's going to take a lot of fucking work and they're going to have to admit they fucked up. Fortunately for me, I also recorded the fact that they fucked up and I already showed the fact that they fucked up. Not my fault that you're a fucking fuck up. The then it's all going to come around to having somebody to blame, isn't it? If it's folks on the bottom, it's the homeless and the mentally ill. If it's folks at the top, you blame the Jews. Those are German names, assholes. Just saying. Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.